Hi guys, KO here. Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila, where we are working to inspire positive, radical social evolution by uniting mission-driven humans. I'm excited to welcome Meagan O'Nan to the T&T mic today. She is an award-winning author, keynote speaker, and vulnerable storytelling expert. She's the author of 3 books, including her new one that will be coming out in April called Held and Free. She is going to be sharing her journey in leadership and focusing on mission-focused organizations, including speaking, and just tips all the way around how we can humanize our leadership so in turn we are all better leaders for ourselves and for those around us. Enjoy this conversation. Be sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts and look for the video on YouTube. Cheers.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I am super excited today. We have fitness fam and collegiate sports fam in the house. We've got Meagan O'Nan to come into the T&T mic. I'm going to read her bio, but then we are going to jump in. We already have female athlete vibes happening, so we want to include you guys in this conversation. We're going to cover a lot today. Meagan talks about mission-focused organizations. You know, on Turmeric and Tequila, we talk about mission-driven humans. So leadership, influencers, business, sports, it's all going to come out today. Here is Meagan's 411. Meagan O'Nan is an award-winning author, keynote speaker, and vulnerable storytelling expert. She is the author of the award-winning book, Creating Your Heaven on Earth, and Courage, Agreeing to Disagree is Not Enough. Meagan has spoken to thousands of people at live events since 2008. Meagan is passionate about creating deeper connections through speaking workshops and through her executive speaker coaching. Her approach is unique in that she uses storytelling as a way to overcome differences and generate healing. For the last decade, she has been a significant voice for the LGBTQ community in Mississippi. Meagan, welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to jump right in. I want to hear, I always ask my guests, tell us a little bit about the beginning. We started talking about this before we jumped on the mic, but give us a little background about young Meagan and kind of how we got to where we are today.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the quick version.
Go way back.
Yeah.
Young Meagan was a very competitive, very hard-headed, very stubborn little girl. I mean, I told you I had 2 brothers. They pushed me to the max as an athlete and as a person. And I guess I developed this ability to just deal with any situation. But I was also a very spiritual child. So I would ask my mom, all the hard questions, when I die and time ends, what does that mean? What is the unknown about? And I would could feel the bigness and the vastness of who I was, but I didn't know what to do with it. And she didn't know what to do with me. So I had a lot going on, a lot of questions. I was raised Catholic and I wasn't getting the answers I wanted in church. And I definitely didn't feel like I fit in spiritually anywhere being in Mississippi. And then later on, as I got older, I realized I was gay and then I didn't fit in that area. So I always just kind of felt like I was out of place, except in athletics. That was the one place where I felt like I fit, where I could just be myself and I could perform and I could, use all of my personality to really dive in and be who I am. And so sports played a major, major role in the confidence I have today. And it's probably the one thing that really got me through all the tough times of coming out and all of the hard stuff that came along with that, and just being different spiritually and not fitting into the culture here and seeing things so different from all of my peers.
Yeah.
So it was definitely the one thing that helped me with my confidence and self-esteem moving forward. I really don't know what I would have done without it. So
a huge piece. We talk about a lot of life skills through sports, and I'm such an advocate, particularly for my young women, but for my young guys too, or anyone non-binary, all my young people getting into sports, because it is those life skills early on, learning to get along with people, being on time, remembering your jersey. I don't know if you have any nightmare stories from college where you lose your jersey or your playbook
all the time.
Yeah, you feel like you're gonna die. But it's our collegiate athletes. I mean, it is so much pressure, and you're such a young human. But man, you get thrust into into these adult roles, and you're playing with your heart. It's super, super vulnerable space to go out there and compete and be. I don't think you're as conscious when you're younger. Like, you go out there and you lose in front of everyone. You can win in front of everyone, but you can fall down. Like, you got to pick. I mean, it's such vulnerable space, but it's such powerful skills when you're young to get back up and let the world see you. Like, you don't really know that, but a lot of people are watching. Was there any
you learn to fail well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And how to deal with it.
And again, managing the business. Like, we had to do obviously our schoolwork, but volunteer stuff. We had study hall hours, and there's just a lot in it. Do you still, did you, after college, were you diligent about keeping sports or something competitive in your life?
Yeah, I did. It was just really funny. So I played basketball and softball at Mississippi State. And then I went to graduate school at Mississippi State, and I tacked on another year because I had switched sports the year before, and it gave me an extra year of eligibility.
Nice.
So I went to graduate school while playing softball. And then after I left that, I went to Florida State. I decided to go get another degree because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And I ended up playing rugby, which was really hard.
Yeah.
And it was I still wanted to be competitive. So I played what do you call it? Club basketball at Florida State, but rugby was a whole nother level. It was very serious thing at Florida State. And a lot of injuries, a lot of nose breaks. And it was definitely a very, very tough transition sport wise. But after that, I have always been active. So I'll play pickup basketball, I'll play tennis, I run, I work out. I always want to be a part of something athletic.
Yeah. Well, you need somewhere to channel that competitive energy. I found CrossFit, thankfully, after college, like 2 or 3 years, but I felt like I was wandering because I was like, I got to compete, and like, business lights the fire and you can compete a little bit there, but it's just not the same for me.
No, it's not.
As my body gets older and I'm sick of getting beat up, we're starting to get more into the business competitive, but it's interesting. And if you were able to play, if you were one of those that could do your collegiate sport and then go to a different sport, you must have been a really good athlete, because I think I knew one other girl that did that, but almost nobody can do that because they're that competitive of team. So you must have actually been legit.
I guess
you can brag. Yeah, you could say absolutely. The biggest one, I'm curious for you, the biggest draw that I got from all these experiences were my friendships and these other really committed varsity humans. Like, we party, we play, but man, when it was business time, it was business time, and we bled the cause. Like, we really were so emotionally invested in, that's, to this day, you go to battle with your teammates, and it's just stuff you don't forget. Do you keep up with any of those humans that were in your athletic past?
Absolutely. Even from other sports, not just people that, we were all kind of this cohesive unit at Mississippi State. And I mean, even just this year, I had one of the track athletes that I went to school with, and one of the football players, they've come and stayed and hung out in our guest house. And so those kinds of things are always happening because you just build those relationships, and athletes understand athletes. And so, but I did go through a hard time of when I did come out, and I lost a lot of friendships. And a lot of those were with some of my teammates, which was super unfortunate. So there is a little bit of heartbreak around that for me too. But the people who have stayed in my life and who have supported me and have been a fellow athlete in the past, those are bonds they just don't go away.
Yeah,
I agree.
They're right on time. It's I think as you get older though, and if some people do filter out, it's heartbreaking, and yet it's kind of okay. I think at least I've learned, often less is more, because you only have so much time and energy, and you really want the quality versus the quantity. And people come in your life, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So if it starts to fizzle out, it's not all a loss. It was just probably served its purpose, and then
100%. Totally agree.
Yeah. It's, and I always say, and kind of you're saying, you're attributing that sports had saved you into safe space. I couldn't agree more. I just loved to compete. And I was 2,000 miles away from my family. I was from Colorado and went out east to George Mason in Virginia. So I was kind of on an island, but I immediately had this lacrosse family they embrace you, but we really did just kind of have to be each other's family. And then obviously as we graduated, we stayed in touch. But I loved, once we got there, it was such an equalizer. You didn't know who was a millionaire or who had no money or sexual orientation, but we didn't know anything, and we didn't care. It was just so business time. It was such an equalizer. Did you feel like that was similar for your experience?
Yeah, I mean, in general, definitely. I kind of feel for kids who come to college without that network. I can't imagine what I would have done without being put back into like a team atmosphere. You're automatically included, you're automatically accepted. You all are there for a common purpose and mission and vision. And there's just nothing like it. It's really special to go to college with a team already, a family already set for you. And so I feel very lucky to have had, those experiences, especially going from one team to the next and continuing to have that, but only sports can provide that,
Yeah. Well, there's nothing that can buy or purchase or recreate those bonds or that opportunity to connect. So I always tell my kiddos, I'm like, it's hard to get into college and it's hard to get into a team, even if it's, club or whatever, but especially like the higher and like D1 super competitive teams, it's hard, but man, if you can do it, if you can hang in there, it's magic. And you get 4 to 5 years. I was actually a redshirt athlete. I tore my ACL my sophomore year, but the fifth year was long. But it's magic. So I don't know. You're here. This is Meagan and I's PSA to go out there and go play a sport and see if you can play it in college.
Yeah, apparently.
I know. But okay, enough about sports. Well, I think it's very indicative. And like I said, God, universe, Madonna, whatever you believe, that prepares you for things early on, even if you're not ready for it, to do bigger things. And I'm curious, as you spoke to tons of people in front of big audience, I think it's different than like stepping into the arena and competing, for me anyways. And I've done a chunk of speaking, certainly not on your level, but I get that same adrenaline. So it's almost like like some of those sports have prepared me. Do you find that for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's why I love it so much. I mean, it is a huge adrenaline rush, and I actually really like working just in any team dynamic, because I love the adrenaline of bringing people together and making things work and finding solutions. It's just in my blood. But yeah, getting on stage and speaking and the preparation. I mean, I feel like I'm going to throw up every time I go out on stage, but by the time it's done, I'm like, that was the best thing that I ever did. So it's a total blast. But I do want to say that transition from college and being a part of a team to finding myself and who I was outside of playing sports was really, really tough.
Yes.
And, getting into the speaking space and writing space was quite hard in the beginning because it was just so different. It was a different kind of, you don't have that team there supporting you. You have to go create your own team. And, it's just a totally different vibe and feel. But that transition point, I think, is really hard for a lot of especially very competitive, high level athletes to just like move from this kind of cushion in a way, this family, and then go out into the world and then create something totally different. So you have to find a way to utilize that same, that driven attitude, that motivation, that thing that's internal for most athletes, and find an avenue for it. So that transition was really hard for me. But once I found it, it was like, okay, let's go.
Well, I think this is an important piece, and I'm glad you brought this up, because that pivot factor is really critical. And I think anytime in life when you lose your identity, obviously I'm amongst a lot of athletes even still to this day, but we talk about kind of like that breakthrough of like all of a sudden you're this athlete and you've got this family and you're George Mason apparel and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden it's over. But I think a lot of people can identify with that, with, divorce, or you leave your church or whatever. Do you have any good steps from your own experience of like how you navigated that pivot?
Gosh, I feel like the thing that was best for me was telling the stories and really diving into what the experiences were, and acknowledging and accepting things as they were and as they actually are in the moment. Because if you can't accept what has happened and you can't accept what is, then I think it's really hard to move forward. And I know I've kind of made a career out of storytelling, and that's a big part of my passion, is like sharing our stories is such a huge way to pivot and move into something different, or to shift, or to see things from a different lens or perspective. And it, creates connections. And there's so many beautiful things about sharing your stories and sharing of yourself that I feel like, looking back on my life and all the pivots I've had to make, that was the one thing that really helped me accept things as they were, and to then see something different. And it would just help me clarify what that next step might be. So that's looking back, that's the thing that's been the most effective for me.
I love that. And I think, man, it's right on time for 2023 because we have this old school kind of like archaic way of leading people and leadership in general. I think it's this very stoic, disconnected, like military type thing. And I can even remember like some of my experience with my coaches where it's like, damn, I'm a human. Like I remember I was like, I mean, I was the only kid that was 2,000 miles away and a plane ran late because of a snowstorm and my whole team ran because like I was like 2 minutes late coming from the airport, like something pretty brutal. And it wasn't like I was hungover in the bathroom and I couldn't get to practice. Like what, so stuff like that where I think in 20 years since I've been a kiddo in college, you're starting to see more of these humanized leadership qualities and coming through, and you see coaches more as human. So I think you're right on time because I think that storytelling piece, not only is it vulnerable, it provides ethos and credibility in that you've walked in it. And I think people as a leader and as a follower can identify with that and connect. And I think that changes the way they want to follow and be inspired by you. Have you seen that personally, like from your coaching experience and being coached to how things are now in your current coaching?
Yeah. And I've worked with a lot of corporate leaders. So I'm seeing that shift in that space. And it's, these leaders, they want to be vulnerable, but they don't know how to be.
Right.
So they end up coming to me and saying like, what can we do here? Like, how do I shape my story so that I'm not telling too much, but I'm telling enough that it opens doors and it builds bridges. And so, there's a total shift in the corporate space for sure, where CEOs or leaders in that space are a little bit unsatisfied with the models and the way they have been. And so they're really, it's being shaken up. COVID changed things. And now people aren't satisfied with their jobs and they're wanting something more. And so leaders are having to adjust. There's a lot of crisis management going on. And I think the only way to attack it is to just hear your employees. And in order to do that, you have to be able to speak up as the leader and share who you are and your struggles and what you've been through so that you can connect with the people who are around you, your teams. Doesn't matter who it is within your organization, so that forward movement can be, can start happening until we hear each other. I mean, what more can we do?
Right.
So even a leader of, a speaker agency now, and I have teams underneath me, it is so important to me in every meeting that we have that if I notice that someone is off, I will contact them outside of that meeting and say, how are you? I noticed that you weren't yourself today. Can I help? Can I support you? And just acknowledging and giving people the space to just be human, right? I mean, we all go through shit.
Yeah.
And we got stuff that we got to deal with every day that's tough.
Absolutely.
So I think just creating those spaces and just paying attention and being willing to be vulnerable with your teams and the people around you is just a really great way to show your humanness and build connection with other people.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's really hard to take that initial step and do something that like leaders you have had probably have never done before. But I think people forget that these are days of our lives. The only finite resource is time. Make all the money you want, do whatever. If you're living it miserably, disconnected, wearing all this armor and kind of dredging through your leadership, something's wrong. And you're wasting, daylight's burning. So we might as well cut to the chase, get to the human side and get real, because we're both spending our time equally. Whether you make $1 million and I make $50, it doesn't really matter. We're spending the same amount of time together, collectively trying to work towards something. So if we're uncomfortable in it, it's a waste of everybody's time. And that goes to productivity and more importantly, mental health. That's more of a conversation ever. We're going from, people quitting or, high employee turnover to conversations around suicide or mass shootings.
Absolutely.
It's really heavy conversation, and that's a whole other podcast. But the
well, it's interesting that it is, and it's happening. Like we have one of our agents on our team who has been in the construction industry, and the construction industry has a really high suicide rate. And so we're developing programs within our agency to help tackle that and provide resources and send our talent in to give talks and do some consulting and all of that. I mean, these are very real things that are happening, and we have to pay attention, and they're conversations that we have to have. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a part of where we are in this moment in time.
Absolutely. And I think anytime you can connect with somebody, even if it's like a cup of coffee or just checking in, just the mere fact, like you said, of acknowledging, like being seen and being heard. I always think we're, especially as like, competitive athletes or cerebral humans or academics, we're seeking for the hard answer because we want it to be the most. And a lot of times I think those answers are simple. Like,
I
listen,
agree.
ask, take a minute.
Connect.
Yeah.
Connect. I mean, that's what we all need. I've noticed I think COVID really brought this home for me because, just being home all the time. But now we live in such a virtual world. All of our work is worldwide now. And I can tell by Wednesday afternoon that I need to be around actual humans in person. And if not, I start to kind of spiral. Like I need that, even though I would consider myself more of an introvert when it comes to like how I take care of myself. But when I go long enough without actual human connection, it really affects me.
Absolutely.
So, especially those deep connections, those real conversations, being with people who are willing to understand you and get you. It's just so important for our mental health.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've heard of blue zones, but as a fellow athlete, it's super fascinating. It's I can't remember the name of the guy or the organization, but they study the different zones around the world where there's the most centurions, people that live to be 100. And there was like 8 characteristics of their well-being. It was like nutrition, spirituality, community, I can't even remember, like staying out of the daylight, like all obvious health things, but like the community and the spirituality were like 2 really big ones because we are innately as human beings, we need community. And then it's important, like down to our health and our existence, to believe into something bigger, however you brand it.
Right.
But it's fascinating. So it kind of,
that's awesome.
I mean, we all need it. And there's like the science to show it. So
that's who we are.
Yeah, it is.
It's just who we are.
So in this pivot piece, we're athletes, we're used to having coaches. When you were starting to like kind of pivot into letting go, I hate saying retired athlete because my heart doesn't even still want to admit it to this day, but not being competitive anymore. Did you seek out a coach then? Like, was that kind of your natural go-to to get like therapy or life coaching or whatever it was to kind of transition that period?
I did see a therapist for a while, for several years. I saw one here while I was finishing up graduate school at Mississippi State. And then I saw another one. I eventually went to Florida State and then I lived in Miami for a while. And so I ended up seeing a therapist there. And then once I moved to Colorado, I lived in Fort Collins for a while. I had many coaches that I worked with. So I've always wanted that mentorship. Yeah. And had this huge, desire to learn and be a better version of myself. And now my teacher is my 4-year-old.
There you go. It all comes full circle. Yep. I do have full faith in our young humans because I think they're just doing things so much better. I'm not around a lot of 4-year-olds, but some of the 20-year-olds that sometimes seem like 4-year-olds are pretty wise in what they're doing. And they've had to digest so much of the world earlier than I did, and they're facing heavier things early. It's like they just see a lot, but they're okay. And I asked intentionally about like therapy and coaching because I think as athletes, we're used to, that's a very normal thing for us. There's always someone better than us telling us what to do, essentially. Right. But we're eager to learn. And I just want to continue to work to normalize the idea of getting a coach, getting a therapist, getting somebody that can help you navigate stuff. Cause it's just like athletes. I mean, it's mental fitness. Like you go in there, get coached and get it right. Yeah.
I mean, hard things happen to all of us and we all have to find a way to process those and deal with them. And we all handle them differently.
Absolutely.
So it's almost impossible, I think, to get through something without help from someone.
Completely agree.
At least someone to talk to.
Absolutely. And can it just streamline the process? You can just, it navigates things so much quicker. Yeah. So we graduated, we started to pivot into other sports. At what point were you like, okay, I'm going to be a speaker. Like, I'm just going to embrace all this and put it on show and make it a thing. Was there a light bulb that went off? It's like, I'm a speaker.
I always wanted to be a speaker and writer. Okay. Like ever since I was little, like I knew that's what I wanted, but I remember at some point I told my parents that, and they were like, well, how are you going to make money? And so I was like, okay, I better go get a degree, and so I got 3 and none of them I use. So it was just something I always knew I wanted. And I was actually working a job there in Fort Collins. I was working for the state of Colorado, and I just was like, this is so not me. Like, I don't work for other people. It's just not me. I'm a creative soul. I have to go explore this. And in 2008, I quit my job, and that was the last 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 that I've had. Everything else has just been, me grinding and working hard and getting out there. And when my wife and I moved here, back here in 2010, we started our own businesses and just grew our businesses and created this really beautiful life. And I'm so proud of us for sticking with our hopes and dreams and what we wanted, because I think people get into business or entrepreneurship and they think, oh, it's going to happen overnight. And it's a grind, you got to keep it up. You got to stick with it.
It stays a grind.
Yep. It stays a grind. It never ends. Once you think you have something figured out, it's probably not figured out. Right, so yeah, I wouldn't change anything about it. I'm so glad that I took that leap. I had absolutely no money. We came to Mississippi with $100 that someone gave us. It wasn't even our money. And we've just made a life that I'm really proud of.
That's amazing. Well, I think that, again, that early skill set, it just like you go on the floor, tip off happens and you just play and you just compete, and there's no hard plan. Even if you have a plan, I love my kiddos that are like, well, in 10 years, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, okay, great. Let me know, call me in 5 and let me know how close you are to that hard 10-year plan. But things are shifting so much, but you just got to show up and compete. But like when you were saying, every time you go to speak, you still get nervous and you feel sick. I think every athlete is part masochist. Like, I don't think if it wasn't hard, we would enjoy it. Like, I almost think
I agree.
Like,
you gotta have that challenge.
Yeah.
Like, the harder it is and the more I'm involved in, the happier I am. Absolutely.
It's turmeric and tequila. It's the devil and the angel. It's like this balancing thing, because if it was easy, we'd have complacency, and that's the devil. That is just like
horrible. It's the worst feeling in the world.
Have you had to navigate in any of that? Like, I'm one of those where I go so hard and then I'm so burned out, like my adrenals are tapped, my brain's shutting off, and it's like universe is like, okay, enough. And then I have to slowly ramp up. But have you slipped into mediocrity or anything like that at times just because you were tapped out?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I would say multiple times. But and for me, it's like, okay, I'm a quick learner. I get through things really fast. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's done. Now what? What's next? And then I don't want to sit in that, like, what's next space and like wait for the clarity, And so that's where the torture mentally comes for me, is like not being willing to be okay with that space in between everything. And so I've worked really hard on that over the years. Just being an athlete, it's like, you want to go, 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 and you don't want to sit in that space in between. And my parents have been just absolute hard workers their entire lives. They don't sit still. So learning to sit in that space and wait for clarity and see what's next has been a challenge, but it's been, a really good challenge for me to practice taking care of myself and being okay when things aren't going 120, miles per hour.
Yeah. Nothing's as hard as it is to be still. But yes, I'm so with you. I've had to learn to just take a breath and sit there. I'm getting back into art because I'm usually even better doing like a little something. Because the still is, the gerbil's running 200 miles an hour on the wheel. But it is.
I get it.
Yeah, it's important to slow down. And I think, and tell me if this is true for you as a leader, like, I was the oldest of 4. So before sports, anything, like I always had this internal pressure to like take care of my brothers or be the leader or something that kind of still flicks on in my brain of like, if I'm slipping and I'm getting casual in my training or business approach or whatever, it's like, you need to like, let's go. Like we got like that leader button never really shuts off in the best way. Do you kind of identify with that?
Totally. Especially, having a team that I'm somewhat responsible for and how they approach their work and how they approach their lives. That kind of pressure keeps me motivated, which is why I love working with teams. But yeah, I think that's always there. And even just being a mom in my family unit, that's, if anything pushes me, it's that constantly like, how can I be better at this so that I don't mess her up?
The generation, I have dogs, I don't have kids, but and I'm definitely one of those dog moms that's way over the top. So I do try and be conscious in that, but it's crazy to think that our kiddos nowadays didn't grow up like us, so they're exposed to so much. But on the flip side, I did all the coaching, therapies, things, training, core values that my parents didn't do. So sometimes I worry, I'm like, well, shoot, I'm not that crazy, but maybe I know too much to raise a human. Like maybe there's too many things that we're throwing at this kid that's 0 years old that doesn't need to do core values. I don't know. Do you feel like sometimes, like, because you have such a wealth of information and experience, like, do you get overwhelmed trying to do all of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. It is the point of conversation with my wife most days. Is like, okay, because we have a lot going on. We have a real estate investment company. I'm, the chief success officer at a speakers agency, and I have my brand and my speaking and my books, and she has her own practice. She's an acupuncturist, and I help her run that. So we have stuff. Yeah. Some days it's just, it doesn't all get done. And that's been the hardest thing for me, is just like, shut it off. It's okay to shut it off. Pick it up tomorrow. It's not going to all get done tomorrow either. And you just do the best you can. But you have to, for me, it's like, where's the balance? What are my priorities? My family's my priority. If my daughter's not getting her one-on-one time with me, we all suffer. So that balance is always really, really tough. So I don't have all the answers, that's for sure. But I definitely am always looking at that and trying to better myself to have that balance, because I don't want to get burned out. I don't want to be so stressed that, I need to go into the hospital, so I try to be really careful with that.
Well, I say this a lot because I know from experience, like my varsity humans, my mission driven people, however we call ourselves, we're going to fix it. We're going to train more. We're going to learn it. We're going to do this. We're going to control it until it's controlling us and we're in the hospital or something. Like it's this very hard thing, because there really is no such thing for balance until I get my turmeric in my tequila brand. So that'll be coming at you guys at some point. But there's no such thing really as balance. Do you have any like tips or go-tos that when you have like that awareness of like, I'm totally imbalanced, that you go to and you kind of check in and try and seek some sort of balance?
If I'm at that point, I definitely know I need time alone. So like if I'm unsure and I feel a little frazzled, I know that the thing I need is to just be quiet, which is, like you said, uncomfortable, but it's the only thing for me is just like go outside, be quiet, get some, like take a deep breath. Then I can see things clearly, and then I know what to do. Because one day my daughter may be like, Mommy, I want to spend time with you. The next day she wants to go be with her friends, or, so I try to pay attention to the needs of others that are in my family too. So it's not just me. Yeah. But ultimately spending time with myself is really the only thing that will give me that sense of clarity and peace and connecting to myself spiritually.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, see that as selfish. And I had a really good coach, an interesting coach. I don't know if she was like a life coach. I'm not sure what the brand was, but coach in general. And it was super effective. It was very forward thinking. And it was a married woman. And she goes, my favorite person to hang out with is me. And I was sitting there like, okay, well, I'm a confident semi-vain animal coming off of, collegiate sports and CrossFit and whatever. And I sat there and I'm like, God, that's an intense comment. But then the more I understood it, I got it. She would go on camping trips by herself, and she's like, I love my husband, I love what I do, but like I love me and I love my time with me. There's no one I'd rather hang out with than me. And it took me a while to understand that, but I really think every human should embrace that, because you got to continue to get to know yourself. Is that how your kind of alone time goes?
Yeah. And my wife and I are really big on supporting each other in that. So like I'll send her away for a weekend, or she'll send me away for a weekend so that we can have a break and just exist and breathe and like process life, process all the things that are happening around us. If I can't have that time to process, like I will eventually break down and cry and get to that point where it's just, I have to take a day off or take 2 days off or whatever. So we are a really good support system for each other in that way, where I can say, you're clearly stressed, or she can say, you're clearly stressed. You need some time to go, like, just go be by yourself, just go outside, get yourself 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you need. And so I'm very fortunate to have that, because sometimes I'm not really good at looking at my reflection and seeing what I need. Absolutely. So she's super helpful, especially since having a kid. It's made it even more challenging to do that. I think we did a better job before, but now it's like this little human needs you all the time. And so it's a little bit harder to see in yourself when you really need that break because you're giving so much.
Yeah. I think that's magic though in a relationship, because if your partner can't see that, or they take it as it's something against them,
Exactly.
those are really intense waters to
Yes.
navigate. And I don't know, it's just hard. So you really got to pick your team. You got to recruit wisely. They've got to,
Yeah.
they've got to be playing the same level ball with you. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's going to be more than therapy that you need.
No, I'm very fortunate. We've been together
Yeah.
almost 15 years,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
we see things very similarly spiritually. When there's a hard decision, we're always on the same page. And yeah, it's that trust that we have. It's like she knows I love her no matter what.
Yeah.
And I know she loves me no matter what. So if she comes at me and says, you need a break, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I do. I do.
I'm going camping with my favorite self. Yeah.
Bye.
I love it. I just think it's important to talk about, because there's so much pressure within relationships or even teams in general to like be together all the time and do this all the time. And it's like, yo, I think that space is so good
It's so important
for everyone. And we are all individuals at the end of the day. There's a lot put on teams, and I'm very much a team animal in all respects, but also I'm very much like an individual. And I think that space is not celebrated enough and very deeply misunderstood. So I'm glad to hear you not only exercise it, you champion it, because I think that's a powerful message.
Absolutely. And I encourage anyone who works with me to do that. Like, go take time if you need a day off, you need a mental health day, go do it. You come before everybody else. If there's no you, there's nothing else. I mean, what do we do without you?
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Well, okay. So we've got 3 books, which I think that's a lot in a pretty quick amount of time. But again, we're championing the varsity masochists within us all. Why don't you give us a breakdown? Creating Your Heaven on Earth and Courage Agreeing to Disagree is Not Enough, and your brand new book coming out in April. Give us like maybe a quick synopsis on all of them, maybe the most on the newest one coming out.
Okay. Creating Your Heaven on Earth was in 2008. And it was published by an independent press, but it was more or less, I was in a really bad relationship at the time. Okay. And it was actually my way of I kind of wrote my way out of that relationship by writing this book. So it was like everything I believe to be true about life and my experiences so far, and just the basic spiritual principles that I had learned over the years. And it really got me out of that relationship. So it was a saving grace in a lot of ways. And it catapulted my career and helped me get on the journey that I wanted to be on. And then Courage Agreeing to Disagree is Not Enough was in 2014. It was really at the height of, LGBTQ rights, marriage rights, equal rights in that space. And I was kind of in the middle of that conversation in Mississippi. And so the thing that I kept hearing, well, Meagan, I love you, but I disagree with your choice to get married, or I disagree with your lifestyle, or I disagree with this or that. And it just drove me crazy because it didn't mean that you fully loved me. Yeah. And so I used it as a point to talk about going beyond agreeing to disagree, because we have to go beyond what our opinions are to get to know people. Mm-hmm. And so that was just my way of working through those times when it was just really hard to navigate hard conversations. And so I wrote it from that perspective of just what I was going through. We got married in 2014 in New York City because it wasn't legal in Mississippi. And just the process of being out here when everyone else, all of our friends, were too scared to be out, and what that was like, and the conversations we had. So that was that one. And then the new one that comes out in April is called Held and Free. And it's about the concept of feeling held by the universe and being held by life, but also believing in inner freedom and choosing inner freedom. And so it's actually really a memoir. It's a very, very, very vulnerable book for me. So I go in deep. It took me 2 years to finish, and I'm really excited about it getting out there. A little nervous, but I put my heart and soul into it. So I'm excited about the message that it has.
Wow. And again, we're intentional varsity humans. But isn't it funny how like things kind of line up without any of the things that you could have controlled. Like it all just, I mean, it's right on time of pivotal points of equal rights. And like your life transition was happening alongside like our worldly transition. So it's pretty magical when you pull back and you can see how little control we really do have.
Yeah.
And has that been freeing? I mean, and I guess slightly serendipitous with this book coming out, like that process to your whole freedom, but also being held and protected in some capacity. Was that like a healing journey for you? And like, did that, obviously it's the title of the book, but like, did that just like not only make it more true, but like you were like heighten the awareness of that it's happening right here and now?
Yes, totally. Like, you give me chills, actually. Yeah, that's exactly how it went. It was just, I feel like since about 2018, having my daughter, and there was a big transition point for me that I felt in having a family, you know, and being that young kid who came out and not knowing if I'd ever have a family. I just didn't have any concept, you know, and so writing about that experience and everything that I've been through has been a very healing conversation for me to have with myself. And really dig in and see things for how they really were, what my perception was. And, you know, it's been a toughie to write, but I'm proud of it. I'm so proud of it.
Good for you. I can only imagine putting it all out there, but then it's a whole other animal to like promote it. I work with a lot of people who are like, I don't want to do Instagram because I don't like my pictures out there. And so like that is kind of like, that's a process. But then doing a book or like really telling all of your truth is extraordinary. And I'm so curious, perhaps in 10 years we'll reconnect, whether you'll have this piece, this memoir for your daughter at some point to read, not just to know mom, but like know the human. Have you thought about that process of like when she picks up these books and she gets to see you as a person and not just a mom?
Yeah, I have thought about that. And I think it'll be a really great thing for me to leave behind to her. Yeah. She'll understand me in ways that I would never be able to articulate properly. And so there's a huge gift in that for sure for me.
Absolutely. Well, and if you think all this conversations we were having at 20, 30, 40, these guys are going to be, you know, exposed to things at 10, 15, 20, and their world's completely different at 25 than what it is now. Like, it's pretty amazing. And this is like, I am I'm an eternal optimist, perhaps blindly some days, but I see the power in our kiddos and the openness and the love and the vulnerability early. Like, you know, we're moving in the right direction, even if very slowly. Their reality is completely different than ours. Do you already see that with a 4-year-old?
Oh my God, all the time. Even yesterday, we were walking outside. We were walking down to the driveway to bring the garbage cans up to the, you know, back up to the carport. And she's walking with me, and we're talking about Valentine's being today. And I said, well, Merritt, tell me about, you know, all the people you love in your life. Her name's Merritt. And she's like, I love myself.
Hey, see,
I was
4 years
like,
old. Took us 30 years.
Dang. If I had that, you know, I'm like, something is being cultivated in her, and I'm really proud of that. You know, like that she knows that language. That is so cool.
Yeah. You're going to save so much money on therapy. Way to go.
I don't know about that.
I know. No, we all need it. It's just like practice. You got to go do both, or sports practice. You got to go do the mental practice. But that's magic. I mean, at 4 years old, like you're a 0-year-old, that young. But the awareness and like how much feedback they're drinking in and adjusting, it's pretty magical. And leaders create leaders. So no surprises. She's going to take over the world in T-2 years.
Well, last night too, she was like, well, I want to give all my classmates, she's in preschool, I want to give all my classmates, you know, something for Valentine's Day. And, you know, the typical thing is like a card and a candy. We had cards, but she was like, I want to do more. She goes to her room. She starts pulling out her stuffed animals. Aww. She picked out a stuffed animal for every single little friend in her classroom and attached a little card and gave her stuffed animals away today to her friends.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So she's
that's another level. That's like a Mother Teresa level.
She's so sweet. She's so sassy too. She's got red hair.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, get her in the sports. Let's energize. Let's channel the sass into the athletics.
A lot. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. Well, okay. You've done all these amazing things. We've written books. We've had self-actualization, which I know is a continuing process. Speaking, the business. I'm really curious, like, what is exciting now? Like, what is the challenge that's going to like light the fire?
Impact.
Oh, I'm so with
For
you.
me,
Okay.
it's about bringing the right people together for the right cause and really making something magical, work. Especially I was talking to you, we're putting this deal together right now with a big construction conglomeration around mental health and wellness, and then bringing all the players in piece to pull that off and make it effective and efficient. Those types of things are what get me really excited, is making a big impact, but involving so many amazing people
Yeah.
in order to actually produce, the outcome. So
I love it. I love
yeah,
it.
I love that stuff.
Yeah. Now does this look like it's like a program within like your speaking organization,
Mhm.
or is it okay. So it's not additional organizations.
No, it's not an
Created.
additional.
Okay.
Yeah, it's within the agency that I help run, and it's just pulling all of our talent in for their, expertise and
Yeah.
pulling off programs that really mean something. Not, I don't, we represent speakers for gigs, but I really just, what's important to me is that we represent speakers who want to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the kind of people that we work with, and the kind of opportunities that I look for on that side of things are things where we can really make an impact.
I love that. And I actually think because you're seeing like the transition in the leadership and we're humanizing leadership. And I mean, basically everything. I work with a lot of brands and we're humanizing the brand, etc. Because people want to see the truth. Like all this smoke and mirrors is just, it's
Agree.
taboo at this point. And even if they don't believe me, they're going to get, they'll be extinct sooner or later. So that's fine. It's just, everything's getting so much more real and so much more powerful. And I think we are getting better about like building the team versus trying to do everything ourselves. Tell me a little bit about the language of I just made note. Let me see where I read it. Mission focused organizations, an organization that leads to win, has 4 distinctive characteristics. We're running close on our time, but I think this is really great because mission driven humans was implanted in my mind. I did a lot with charity work, but the mission driven thing, a lot of people, they don't really understand it. But it's basically people pursuing their purpose through their sport, their profession, whatever. How did this come to you? Why does this make sense for mission focused organizations?
It's kind of the same concept. It's like companies like Bombas
Yes.
who sell these amazing socks, but really the mission is to give socks to people who are homeless who don't have socks. So I love that businesses are being built to make a difference. And I think that's obviously the new wave that's been happening, is that social impact. And so that's what I talk about when I talk about mission driven organizations who are driven by a mission. So have created a product to fill that mission. I feel like that's the way that the corporate space is really shifting into, and people are kind of like butting up against that, but that's what people want.
Absolutely. I love it because our kiddos will look on the phone and they'll be like, oh, this gives back to a women's rights foundation, or it gets back to like our kiddos are the conscious consumers. So if CEOs and stuff aren't listening, we'll go ahead and don't listen. But our consumers are going to navigate right around it and intentionally go to those companies doing it right. So I love that you're in it. I have 100 more questions for you, but we are coming up on time. Is there anything else you want us to share? The things are coming up. Anything else about the book, the business, the family, wisdom in general?
I would just say book's coming out in April, and it's called Held and Free, and be on the lookout for that. And got a lot planned for the month of April. It's going to be exhausting, but a lot of fun. I'm really excited to get this book out there. So that's really at the forefront of my own personal brand right now, is just really making sure that it gets the attention I feel like it deserves.
There you go. Well, in my opinion, I think one of the most important qualities in leadership is walking in it and just showing why you are credible and speaking your truth. And I think once that's established, everything else can flow from there because people buy in and they believe you. So I really accredit you and all the gold stars from my end for doing all the business and stuff, but like then just doing the truth and putting it on paper and putting it out there. I think that will be a massive game changer. So I don't even know what will come of it. I think it'll be big. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We'll definitely keep in touch. All things mission driven, everything. I will keep in touch with you. I even want to look up like your speaking agency. I have some laps to run in that area before we jump on the big stage. But I love like the energy and just the chasing of impact. I think that's amazing. I would love to see you. I'm just going to put this into universe on like Hoda and Jenna or one of those morning live shows or something like that. Are you a manifester?
Yes.
Are any of those appealing, or is that all basic bill that I just threw at you?
No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So my book launch actually, so my agent, she got, so in the second week of April, the book is going to be on the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square.
Okay.
And I'll be ringing the bell at the stock exchange.
What?
And she's trying to get me on GMA. So I'm calling that one in because I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Let's go. Okay.
Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we'll kick off the book launch like that, which I can't think of any other better way. So
I was gonna say I was setting the bar way too low for you right there. I should have known. We should have gone like Madonna and Oprah status over here.
Let's go.
But yes.
Brene Brown.
Please build this team. I'm here for this.
Yeah.
I'll be the water girl, whatever that team looks like. we'll come through in some capacity. But I love it. There's big things. Let's try and reconnect. I do like to have guests on again, like 6 months in a year or something, just to see how stuff went. And especially if you're like right on the cusp of a big wave coming in, just to check in and see what the vibes are and see how the
I would love to. That sounds great. This has been fun.
Yes. Hit us really quick. I'll of course put it in there, but social media handles, anything, or websites you want people to come hit you up.
A website, it's got all my social on it, meaganonan.com, meaganonan.com. You can find everything you could possibly want there about me. Go. Yeah.
Future link to her Good Morning America appearance. So be ready for that on the website. Meagan, I appreciate your time and energy.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait to see what's next.
No, me too.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.